I stopped the ceremony with the mic in my hand and said very calmly, "Who told the babysitter to leave?" Every head turned to the back of the barn where my sister's 3-year-old was shrieking like a fire alarm and my fiancé, well, I guess ex-fiancé now, wouldn't meet my eyes. I could taste frosting and adrenaline. My dad stood, my mom reached for her pearls she never takes off, and my future mother-in-law smiled like she'd been waiting for this. Somewhere in the chaos my phone buzzed. A screenshot lit the screen, a text thread I wasn't supposed to see. And that was the moment I realized the screaming wasn't the problem. The secret was. Let me rewind. I'm 29F. Or was 29F last month. I turned 30 the Thursday after all this. My sister, Leah, 26F, had her son Finn young and we've all rallied around her because she is eternally on fire, cute, charming, and allergic to boundaries. I love her. That's important. I also work in event planning and I've seen beautiful days turn to confetti hell by what I call the 3 horsemen: rain, open bars, and toddlers. So when my fiancé Dylan, 31M, proposed, we were aligned on the single most boring rule in wedding history: no kids. We said it out loud. We printed it on invitations. We offered childcare stipends and vetted 3 sitters through my company. We were boring and responsible and, I thought, united. People grumbled. I sent kind emails. I have templates for this. While we adore your little ones, our venue and program can't safely accommodate children, so we hope you'll enjoy a rare night off on us. Add a smiley. Add a voucher. Done. Leah didn't RSVP. She said, "I'll figure it out," which in Leah dialect translates to, "Everyone else will figure it out around me." She tried the usual angles. He's basically an emotional support animal. He won't make a peep. He's part of our family. Why would he miss my sister's wedding? She brought Mom in. Then Dad. Then my aunt, whose hobby is guilt. I said, "I'm not debating this with a committee." I clarified 3 times and then I stopped responding to group texts. Here's the part where I know I sound rigid. I did not want my own wedding day hijacked by bedtime, snack cups, or the shattering scream toddlers produce when gravity betrays them. I also have a complicated relationship with being the older, steadier sibling whose milestones become a group project. I wanted one day where my yes was yes and my no was no and the room held. That's it. That's the heart. No villains, just a boundary. The week before the wedding, our planner, well me but with a day of coordinator, confirmed with every sitter. I even booked a small kids' room at a B&B 2 blocks from the barn venue, stocked with puzzles and goldfish crackers. I offered to cover Uber rides for parents to drop off their kids. I removed every possible excuse. Dylan told me I was being so thoughtful, babe. He kissed me and said he'd handle his side if anyone got spicy. That night, Leah called to check in and casually asked, "So like, hypothetically, what if Finn is having a rough night and the sitter needs to bring him by for 5 minutes?" I said, "Then the sitter will text me and the answer will still be no." She got quiet and said, "You changed." I said, "I grew up." She hung up. On the morning of the wedding, I felt calm. Hair in rollers, coffee in hand, wearing the oversized white shirt my grandfather wore every Sunday because it felt like armor. The florist arrived. The band did a soundcheck. Dylan texted me a selfie with his groomsmen and his mother, Sandra, who was wearing a silver dress that read Mother of the Bride more than Mother of the Groom, but whatever. She's talented like that. At 11:47 a.m. my phone buzzed. From unknown. I'm Kelly, Finn's sitter tonight. Can you confirm drop-off address? Thanks, smiley face. I blinked. The B&B had confirmed Kelly last week. Why was she unknown? I realized she must be texting me from a different number. I sent the address and went back to lip liner. 2 minutes later, "We might be a bit late if Mom wants to stop by venue first." I typed, "No kids allowed at the venue. Drop off only." 3 dots. No reply. I set the phone down. The ceremony was at 5. The light was syrupy and gold. I remember thinking the aisle looked like a river I wanted to swim across. The music started. Guests stood. I saw faces I loved. I saw Leah in a sleek navy dress, makeup immaculate, expression unreadable. No Finn. My body let go of a knot. We made it through vows to the speak now line, which is a ridiculous line that shouldn't be there, and nobody spoke. The officiant smiled. The wind lifted my veil. I felt unreasonably cinematic. And then, like a match struck in a dry forest, a child cried. That cry. The one that drills into your ear canal and sets off the part of your brain programmed to find shelter. Heads turned. My mother didn't, which told me everything. She kept her face serene, eyes on me, jaw tight. Leah clutched her clutch. Next to her, Sandra, my almost mother-in-law, whispered something to Dylan's sister and smiled not at the baby, not baby toddler, but at me. The look you give a chessboard when your opponent finally notices check. I paused. The officiant did the kind little laugh people do when there's a harmless interruption. I heard the coordinator whispering into her headset, moving like a sparrow trying to trace the sound. It was coming from the open barn doors, halfway hidden behind a column of eucalyptus. The sitter's voice, "We can't be here, sweetie, we have to go." And a small voice, "No." I looked at Dylan. His face said, "Don't make a thing." My hand said, "This is already a thing." My mouth borrowed the mic and said, "Who told the babysitter to leave the B&B?" Silence rippled across the room. It was not the question they expected a bride to ask in a white dress. It was not the question I expected to ask. But there it was, hovering, collecting eyes. That's when my phone buzzed in my bouquet. One new text. A screenshot. A group chat named Family Plan Blue Heart, with members I recognized and one I didn't. A bubble from Sandra at 3:22 p.m. "I've arranged for Kelly to bring him by the back so we can tuck him in the side room before the ceremony. Dylan agrees it will calm Leah down." And a bubble from Dylan. "Yeah, just keep it out of my name as line of sight. She'll be fine once we're up there." And a bubble from Leah. "Thank you, Sandra, you're literally saving this day." I did not make a scene. Not yet. I did something very un-me. I smiled into the mic and said, "Give me 5 minutes," and walked down the aisle, past the eucalyptus, past my aunt's chirping bracelets, to the back where Kelly, the sitter, stood alone with a boy in frog pajamas and a diaper bag that said Finn in navy thread. I crouched. "Hey, buddy." He hiccuped and reached for the greenery. Kelly looked dead on her feet. "I was told to bring him here for a quick hello," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I was told you knew." I said, "You're not in trouble. Can you please take him to the address I texted and wait there? The coordinator will meet you and I will personally triple your rate." Kelly nodded like she'd just been given a glass of water in July. She scooped Finn, who spotted Leah in the crowd and reached, and I did not look at my sister because if I did we would set each other on fire. Kelly left. The cry receded. People exhaled. Somewhere a fork fell. I turned, walked back up the aisle to my almost husband, and handed the mic to the officiant like it was a sleeping bird. And then the weirdest calm swept me, the kind that feels like standing at the edge of a cold lake knowing you will jump. I looked at Dylan. He tried to give me the face again, the let-it-go face. And that's when my dad stood. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked to the end of our row, leaned by the aisle, and fixed his gaze on Dylan with the look dads get when they're not mad, not disappointed, but suddenly very awake. I felt my spine lengthen. The bandleader shifted her weight. The evening waited. And then flickers of last week replayed, the way Sandra had insisted on a family photo moment before the ceremony, her suddenly warm text to Leah, Dylan's weirdly light tone when I asked about final head counts. The puzzle pieces that had been scattered on the kitchen island of my brain slid into a picture I didn't like. I smiled again and said, quiet enough for him but loud enough for the mic to carry, "Did you agree to this?" He swallowed. The hurt thing in me wanted him to say no. The adult thing in me knew he wouldn't. He said, "I didn't want to stress you, okay?" Leah was panicking, my mom was trying to help. The officiant's smile finally broke. The first time I babysat Leah, she was 2 and had a nightmare about a wolf with a watch. Our mom had to go back to the restaurant, Dad was at the night shift, and Leah woke to a storm. I was 8 and I didn't want to be the grown-up yet, but there was no one else. I made a fort under the table, gave her my old yellow blanket, and listened to the thunder until it started to sound like a train far away. She fell asleep on my chest. I remember thinking, okay, I can be the door. I can be the boring person who keeps it shut. That's the role I picked, or it picked me. Doors are so unromantic. But they matter. So when Dylan said he didn't want to stress me, it landed like someone telling a door it shouldn't mind being left open in a storm because it's just air. It wasn't about air. It was about the room. It was about the promise we'd printed in ink and said to each other in the kitchen after too much pasta. No kids, not because we hate kids, but because we wanted the room to hold. I'm not proud of what I did next. I'm also not sorry. I nodded to the coordinator, who is tiny but engineered out of military-grade steel. She went to escort the sitter to the B&B and locked the side doors. I took the mic back and said, "We're going to take 5 minutes to confirm a detail and then we'll continue." Guests laughed like, "Oh, quirky wedding." I turned off the mic, looked at Dylan and said, "Did you text Kelly to bring Finn?" He said, "I didn't text her directly." Which was clever because the screenshot showed Sandra texting. I said, "But you agreed." He said nothing, which is a yes that thinks it's a ghost. I stepped aside with him, 2 feet, our friends and families pretending to admire the fairy lights in the rafters, the rustle of eucalyptus suddenly too loud. Sandra started to glide toward us and my dad intercepted her with the politest wall a man can become. Leah didn't move. She was pale, biting the inside of her cheek, which she does when she thinks she's being unfairly tamed. I asked Dylan, "What else is in that group chat?" He said, "It's not important." I held up the phone. I'm guessing there was a plan to tuck him in the side room, and then act surprised when he wandered in for a quick photo? His eyes widened just enough to confirm I'd landed on the right square. "This is insane," he said. "It's literally 20 seconds. He's your nephew." No, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked, "When did my nose stop counting?" He pinched the bridge of his nose like I was a spreadsheet. "Babe, we compromise in families. That's what this is. Compromise." I looked at Leah then. She tilted her head in that sorry not sorry angle influencers use. I thought of all the compromises I have already made for her. Switching shifts so she could sleep, picking her up at midnight when the bus app lied, covering daycare that semester her checks bounced. Those were choices I made because I love her. This wasn't a choice. This was my boundary repackaged as a personality flaw. Compromise implies both parties give. I had already given. The childcare room, the stipend, the gentle templates, the gentle tone. What did they give? A secret plan to stage a sentimental ambush at the one moment my answer should be sovereign. I said, "Go get your mom and your phone." His eyebrows knit. "Why?" I said, "Because if I'm about to marry into a family that thinks railroading equals love, I want to be certain." He said I was being dramatic. I said, "No. I'm being specific." He walked to Sandra. She smiled too wide. He whispered. She bristled, then made herself smooth. She produced her phone with theater. We stepped to the side door. My coordinator, bless her, materialized with calm like a glass of water set on a nightstand. She said, "Do you need a room?" I said, 2 minutes. We unlocked Sandra's screen. We opened the chat. It was worse than the screenshot because it was boring. Boring is worse because it isn't even villainous, it's just thoughtless. Messages like, "She'll get over it. She's being very bright about this. If we get a crying video, TikTok loves it." Jokes about kid tax. A little plan for how, post-ceremony, Finn could carry the rings for a cute Candid's moment. Never mind that we weren't using a ring bearer. Buried in it was a message from last month. "We should make sure, my name, feels heard but also keep Leah calm." From Dylan. I read it twice. It told the whole story. The story where I was a variable to manage, not a partner. The story where women who say no are weather fronts and men who agree in private but fold in public are the realists. The story where my sister learned, again, that the messy person defines the shape of the room. I handed the phone back to Sandra and said, "Thank you." She tried to reach for me the way you pat a dog you don't know. "Sweetheart, it's just one little boy," I said. "Please don't call me sweetheart." I walked to Leah. She looked brittle like sugar glass. "Where's Finn now?" I asked. "With Kelly," she said, defensive. "Are you happy?" My tongue almost made the easy retaliation. I swallowed it. "I want you at my wedding," I said. "I don't want your son. That's the deal. You know that's the deal." She blinked hard. I said, softer than I felt, "I offered good care. You refused. This isn't about him. You made it about him because he rides in front of your decisions like a shield." She flinched. "Don't say that." "I did," I said. "And I love you. And I'm not changing the rule." She didn't apologize. She said, "You'll regret this. It would be cleaner if this is where I announce I called off the wedding on principle." The room applauded. TikTok crowned me queen of boundaries. Real life is not a true crime podcast. Real life is a string you follow by feel through a dark room. I went back to the aisle. I took Dylan's hands. I said, I need you to say out loud to me and to this room, that you agree with our rule, that you broke it, and that you won't do that again, not for your mom, not for my sister, not for anyone." His face drained. "Now," he said. "Yes," I said. "Now." He stared. Sandra hissed his name like steam. He squeezed my fingers like I was the stubborn thing. He said, "I'm not going to humiliate my family on my wedding day." I smiled with my teeth, the way dogs do when they're about to choose themselves. I turned to the officiant. "We need a break," I said into the mic. People murmured like bees. The band started playing something charming. I walked calmly to the little prep room with the white paint and the mirror rimmed with light bulbs and the emergency sewing kit. My dad followed. He closed the door gently, like a door that has seen too many storms but still wants to be useful. He sat. I stood. The mirror showed a woman in white with perfect hair and a brand new decision. Here's the thing I haven't said. I always thought my life would be allowed to exist once I kept enough other lives from falling apart. It's the oldest trick. Make yourself indispensable so they don't notice you have needs. People love doors. They love when you absorb weather. They love when your hinges don't squeak. And then one day you think, maybe I don't want to be a door. Maybe I want to be the person on the other side. My dad is not a talker. He doesn't give speeches, he fixes dishwashers at 11 p.m. and slips 20s into pockets at holidays. He said, "Kiddo, nothing that matters asks you to be small." I said, "I don't want to blow up my life because of a tantrum." He said, "Whose tantrum?" And my stomach dropped because he was right, it wasn't the toddlers. I asked him, "If I call this, and I mean really call it, are you with me?" He said, "I picked you first on the day you were born. Your mother did too. We will pick you every day." He put his hand over mine. It was warm and heavy, old train steady. The coordinator knocked. "Kelly texted that Finn is settled and asleep," she said. "Door is locked. What do you want to do?" I looked at my father. I looked at the mirror. I felt the room tilt toward the future. I opened the door. When I came back out, people were in the polite limbo of weddings interrupted, hovering over plates, whispering like they were deciding whether to salvage a casserole. Dylan stood at the front, jaw set. Sandra had collected herself into a statue. Leah had disappeared. I'd find out later she was by the oak tree, crying into the kind of napkin that leaves lint all over your cheeks. I took the mic. My voice did not shake. "Hi," I said, because you always start there, simple. A ripple of laughter soothed the barn. "I want to share something. We made a very clear request about no children at this ceremony. Some people whom I loved decided they knew better." I paused, not dramatic, just breathing. I don't want to embarrass anyone. I want to be clear about the kind of home I want to build. In our home, yes means yes. No means no, especially when it protects a boundary we agreed on together. In our home, we don't outsource hard conversations to other people and call it compromise. I turned to Dylan. "I asked you for reassurance. You couldn't give it. I let that land. So I'm going to ask something else. Do you want to postpone this ceremony a week so we can actually have that conversation? Or do you want me to say vows today to a man who needs his mother to manage my no?" You could hear the eucalyptus think. Dylan said, only loud enough for me in the first 2 rows, but the mic caught it anyway. "This is insane. Everyone's here. Be reasonable." Reasonable. The word that turns doors into doormats. I looked at my dad. I looked at my mother. She nodded just once. The kind of nod that says, jump. The kind of nod that says, I will be the shore when you climb out dripping and cold. I said into the mic but not theatrical, "Then I'm not saying vows today." Gasps like the room opened a window. The band didn't scramble, they're pros. They slid into the good time playlist. The coordinator moved like wind, quietly rearranging the universe. People started clapping in that weird supportive way people clap when they don't know if they should. Sandra hissed my name again like a tea kettle that refuses to take itself off the stove. Dylan said, "You're overreacting." I said, "Maybe. And maybe that's what it takes to stop a pattern." He dropped my hands. I won't pretend I floated down the aisle like a queen. I walked like a person who kept putting one foot in front of the other because planting both felt like drowning. Guests parted. Some reached for me. A surprising number said, "Good for you." My aunt with the bracelets tried to make it about herself and I hugged her briefly and kept moving. I sat in the green room with my best friend Sam, 29M, who has the self-esteem of a golden retriever and the loyalty of one too. He said, "Proud of you." I said, I might have just ruined my life. He said, or you saved it. Same door. Different side. The evening did not explode. It shifted. The caterer served dinner anyway, paid for, my mother said practical. The bar opened. The flowers didn't wilt just because my vow did. Kits, none because the rule held, didn't appear like gremlins. People danced. My nephew slept 2 blocks away and the world spun on its axis, shockingly unperturbed. At 9 p.m., Dylan's sister texted me a photo. It was of Sandra, alone at a table, staring at the centerpiece like it had betrayed her. No caption. At 10, Leah texted, "He woke up asking for you." I stared at that line. The manipulation of it, the true ache under it, both. I walked to the B&B with Sam. We knocked softly. Kelly opened the door with a tired smile. I pulled up a chair and read Finn a book about trucks. He fell asleep again with his sticky hand wrapped around mine. This is the part one want the internet to understand. It was never about him. I went home to my parents' house that night. I slept in my old room with the glow-in-the-dark stars I never peeled off the ceiling. I turned 30 on the couch, between my parents, eating leftover cake with forks and watching a documentary about coral reefs. It felt like a decision. The next morning Dylan called. "We need to talk." We met at the diner. The waitress with the cat-eye eyeliner knew me from high school. She poured coffee like absolution. He said, "You humiliated me." I said, "You agreed to make me small." He said, "It was just one thing." I said, "It was the hardest thing." He said, "So that's it?" I said, "It doesn't have to be. But I won't marry you until you tell your mother to back off and you tell my sister, no, without blaming me." He said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "I can't do that to my mom." I said, "You're doing it to me." We sat. The coffee went cold. A toddler in a corner booth banged a spoon and I didn't flinch. He pushed his mug away and said, "I think we want different lives." I said, "I think you want me to be a door." He looked at the window. He looked like a boy who wanted someone else to do his weather for him. We split the check. 2 days later I boxed my dress. Not burning it, not smashing it, just putting it somewhere soft where cloth can forget shapes. I called the vendors and paid every last invoice because I do not want my no to cost someone else's rent. I wrote Kelly a thank you note with cash tucked inside because she became the only adult in a room of them. I sent Leah a message, "I love you. When you're ready to talk about boundaries that don't use your son as leverage, I'm here." She sent a heart emoji and nothing else. Sandra posted a vague Facebook status about modern brides, which my aunt liked before I could mute her. Here's why I'm here. My friends split. Half say I did the right thing, that I shouldn't marry someone who folds under pressure and calls it kindness. Half say I was theatrical, that adulthood is swallowing small annoyances for the sake of family, that I should have said the vows and the speech later. I keep replaying the moment I asked him to say the words and he said, "Be reasonable." That's the bone I can't stop tonguing. Was I wrong to stop the ceremony? I can already hear the comments. No kids means no kids. You saved yourself years of resentment. This is why you put your phone on Do Not Disturb. And the others? It's a wedding, not court. You humiliated people. Babies cry, get over it. I've chewed all of that. I know the internet loves neat villains and satisfying exits. There aren't any here. Just a woman who didn't want to be the only door anymore. I told Dylan I'd be open to couples counseling if he wanted to try again. He said he needed to think. I told Leah I'd still babysit next month if she needs to pick up a shift. She said she'd let me know. Life continued. My mother texted me a photo of the coral reefs that night. She wrote, "They rebuild slowly when you stop poisoning the water." AITA for stopping my wedding because a boundary got quietly bulldozed? I didn't expect an answer from the internet to feel like permission, but the messages poured in with stories that rang like bells. Women who said yes so often they forgot how no sounded. Men who woke up at 45 and realized keep the peace is a fire that eats houses from the inside. There were also the ones who called me unhinged. I read those too. I tried them on like jackets. None fit. 3 days later, Dylan texted, "Counseling." We went. The therapist asked him, "Who do you betray when you tell your mother yes and your partner no?" He fidgeted. The therapist asked me, "What does it cost you to be calm?" I laughed too loud and then cried, which is how my body bargains when I don't want to answer. We did 4 sessions. He told his mother to step back once, and she cried in the way people cry when they're losing power but calling it devotion. He told my sister no once and she didn't speak to him for 24 hours, which he found unbearable and I found clarifying. We circled the same truth. He wanted a world where women liked him because he made their storms his weather report. I wanted a world where we built a roof together. We postponed the wedding for real. We returned some gifts. My grandmother called to say she was proud of me and then told me a story about how she almost didn't marry my grandfather because he spent $10 on a set of knives without asking, the 1952 version of nice guys agreeing with their mothers in group chats. In her story she chose the knives. In mine I chose the door. Maybe those are the same. A week after the non-wedding, Leah came over with Finn. He ran into my arms and called me Nini, which he made up. He pressed a sticker of a dinosaur onto my forehead with solemn ceremony. She sat on the couch like a balloon going slack. "I'm sorry," she said, not looking at me. I said, "For what?" She said, "For making you the bad guy so I didn't have to do an adult thing." I said, "Do you hear yourself?" She nodded, eyes bright. "I'm trying. I love you. I hate doing hard things. You're good at them and I resent that because it looks effortless." I laughed because effortless is the funniest word anyone has ever used for me. "It's not," I said. "I know," she said. "Teach me." So I taught her how to write the text to a shift manager, how to put the sitter's number into her favorites, how to set a timer for bedtime that vibrates instead of dings. It felt like teaching someone to swim by giving them permission to be tired. Finn fell asleep on a mound of throw pillows. The dinosaur sticker flaked off and stuck to the rug. At 11 p.m. my phone lit up. A message from Dylan. "I told my mom I'm not living with her expectations anymore. She said she doesn't know who I am." I said, "Me neither, but I'd like to find out without her narrating." He added, "I'm scared." I wrote, "Me too." He said, "Can we meet tomorrow?" Not to fix, to talk. I said yes. We met. He looked like someone who had finally let the rain hit his skin. We sat at the same diner. The waitress poured coffee like an old friend. He said, "I don't want you to be a door. I want to be a person with you on the other side." I said, "That's the first sentence of a vow I could say. We're not married. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We're in the middle where conflict hooks live, where you can take the easy exit or the brave hallway." I can hear the internet again. "Don't take him back. People don't change. Get your refund." And also the quiet ones. "Sometimes they do. Sometimes you do too." I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you the truth, which is the only romantic thing I know how to offer strangers. We set a date to talk about a new date. We set ground rules. We told our families, separately, that no one will be allowed to make decisions for us, not even in the name of keeping the vibe. Sandra is furious in that decorous way. Leah is wary and trying. My parents are tired and proud. Finn learned how to say boundary, and uses it every time he doesn't want to put on socks, which is objectively hilarious. Last night I took the dress out of the box and let it breathe. Cloth remembers, but it also forgives. I put it back. I went to bed with the window cracked so I could hear the rain. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a train far away, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the door. I was the person on the couch, not holding it shut, just listening, deciding what I'll do in the morning. If you're waiting for the neat end, there isn't one. I didn't marry him on that day. I might on another. Or I might not. But I didn't make a promise I couldn't keep in a room where my no had been rebranded as a personality quirk.